Okay, welcome. This is the 8th of December 2020 board meeting. And with us today, we have a very special guest. Joanne is with us with Lift Ireland, and she has graciously agreed to come and kind of just, I guess, for the record, give us a little bit of a history of the organization, what, how it was birthed and how it's progressed and then where you are now, and then probably most importantly where you're going from here. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you run with it.
Sure. Well, look, thanks for asking me to join you today. Delighted to share anything that I can about Lyft. So, Lyft, I suppose Lyft started as an idea many years ago. In that I always knew I was going to do something. So I'm 50 now. I set up my own business when I was 27. I own an educational business. I own a training company. I and I suppose so. I have run business for many years, and I was doing a lot of leadership training in corporations, and particularly they were interested in the area of leadership from an entrepreneurial point of view, and I work a lot with entrepreneurs, so that was something they were interested in, and I suppose the idea was in my head to do something because one, I loved working in these corporates, but at the same time, I was really well aware that this is amazing for corporates and they can afford to pay for this. But wouldn't it be great if there was this kind of leadership development for our not-for-profit organizations and our homeless associations and our schools and so on. So that was one thing that was in my mind. The second thing was that I suppose in about 2015, 2016, my business was quite mature at that stage. I had a really good management team in there. And so my time was very much freed up. The business really ran and didn't need me so much. So it gave me some time to really to do the leadership work that I want to do. So that was the second factor in all of this, in that my time was a little bit freed up. And then another thing that led to the development of Lyft was that Ireland is, I think, a really fantastic country. I'm very proud to be Irish. I'm very proud to live in Ireland. And at the same time, I had spent time in my 20s in the Rwandan refugee camps. I worked there as a volunteer from 1995 to the beginning of 97 after the genocide in Rwanda. And so that gave me a very good taste in my 20s for how fortunate we are here in Ireland. And this was in my mind very much that, I love this country and we're very fortunate here. We've no poisonous insects. Our police don't even have guns, or most of them don't. Like it's a great country to live in. But we are very fortunate that we've landed here, or at least I am. And yet at the same time, we don't have to look back very far. It's just a couple of weeks and we will find poor leadership and poor behavior across our different sectors of business, sports, our church, and so on. And in fact, even in church, Ireland has been very hurt by our church organizations, very, very hurt, and they're very wounded really by that. So and they would have been the people that people would have historically trusted probably most. But at the same time, our businesses, our media, we don't have to look too far, and we can see mismanagement, poor leadership, unethical behavior. And it's not that we're a corrupt country, we're not, but it's just that we're good, but we're not good enough, or at least better is definitely possible. So all of these things were swirling around in my head for many years. And in 2016, it kind of got to the stage where I had an opportunity to think about it more. It was also in 2016 when I really started to think about what I was going to do about this? You know, I can talk about it to my friends and so on, and other CEOs and business people, but what was I actually going to do about it? So it was also in that year that I read a book that John Maxwell wrote. John isn't as well known in Ireland at all. Very few people know of John's writings in Ireland. So it's not as well known as perhaps the US. But I did read one of his books in April 2016, and I thought, this guy speaks a lot of common sense. And I really liked the way that he spoke. And so I went to the US that August to do training, as some of you guys have done too. And I had no idea what I was doing there. In fact, when people would sort of be talking about, you know, I didn't even know who John was. I just liked one book that I had read and sort of thought, I'm going to check this out. So I did. And so I suppose I was very, very much, there's no doubt I was inspired by John and what he was doing. And that made me think some more about the significance of what I was doing too. So early 2017, then in the March, I decided that I was going to launch Lift Ireland. And it was really sort of thinking about Ireland as a country, and Ireland as a developed country, and we're a well-off country, you know, we're economically good and strong. And it really made me think, you know, we need to do this for ourselves. We need to up level our leadership in our country. And this is no criticism of any political or positional leaders, but just that throughout the country, we need to up level where we're at. From our kitchen tables to our classrooms, our clubhouses, and in our boardrooms. So I started to talk to a couple of people in Ireland about launching Lift, and started to put an advisory board of business people together. And so I started to put that together. And then in the September of 2017, I went to Paraguay. I wasn't supposed to be on the trip. There were only 40 something people that were there, but as part of one of John Maxwell's trip. And it was there that I saw the roundtable process. And we were going to do Lift, and we were going to do it differently. We were going to do leadership training, and we were going to do leadership training within corporates and then give it for free in the nonprofits. But when I saw the roundtable method, I knew it was just, I've been in education my whole life. I just thought this is a really smart behavior improvement tool. And so I had thought at the time that you know, I could just use what I saw in Paraguay, but realized then that I couldn't, and went to talk to Mike Paulin and said to them, look, this is what we're looking to do in Ireland. Can we use the roundtable process? And he said, yeah. He says, come to Ohio, meet with us, and so on. So we did that. And now our intention was probably different to most people's, in that Lift is an Irish thing. It was always going to be an Irish thing. It was always important that we were able to write our own materials for Ireland. We are a non-denominational, open to everybody, completely for everybody. It, you know, it doesn't matter what you believe, what you don't believe. It doesn't matter what political party you are, what you're not. We're not associated with any other organization. It's the people of Ireland lifting themselves. That was really important. And we explained that to Mike and those, and they were really generous with us and said, yes, you can use the process, which they let us use. So, so we launched Lift in May 2018. We got 24 founding partner organizations, from our big electricity supplier, our airport. I went after organizations that really represented the brand of Ireland. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know. I just went in and said, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to lift leadership in the whole country. And they said, okay. And, you know, to be honest, I'm not known in Ireland. I just was pretty determined, and that's how we went about it. And so we started off with 24 founding partner organizations. We launched Lift. I had actually hired or contracted John Maxwell to come in and train on leadership at that launch. You know, so he came, and in the afternoon he trained on, or throughout the day he trained on leadership. He did the 5 levels of leadership, which was brilliant, because I felt that I needed somebody really good to talk about common sense leadership. So he did that, which was amazing. And we launched Lift. So that was the start in May 2018. And our first 2 years, so we've done 2 years up until May 2020, and our first 2 years were very much about building the team, building credibility, proof of concept, starting to measure impact, and getting partner organizations on board. So we did that in our first 2 years. We trained, I think, 1,000 facilitators in our first 2 years. I can get you the exact numbers. And so by May, we had trained 1,000, we had 6,000 people engaged. And we had 28 secondary schools. So that's our high schools. And we had 1 school in our first year, 28 in our second year. And by May, we had, I think, about 50 organizations on board. Now, years 3 and 4, and we're halfway through year 3. So years 3 and 4 are all about scale. So once we kind of hit that second year, it was all about scale. So we had to get everything ready for scale up to year 2, and I'd given us 2 years to do that. And so in our first 6 months of year 3, we've now engaged 10,000 people. We have trained 4,500 people. We've over 200 organizations now that are involved. 100 of those, or 96 of those, are secondary schools. And we have about 100 corporations and not-for-profit organizations that are involved. And so we're set up structurally like a business. I suppose I am, first and foremost, for the purposes of this, I'm a business person. So we have an advisory board. They were instrumental, really, in opening business doors. We have, I think, 70 something corporate partners on board, and about 30 not-for-profit organizations that are involved. We will be quite different to perhaps the US situation, in that, like, we wouldn't have any churches involved there as a partner organization, probably simply because churches aren't really an organization in the same way as they are perhaps in other countries. And it wouldn't be our target group. There's the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church, and it just really wouldn't work like that. So when I say not-for-profit organizations, it's an organization dealing with suicide. They're all multi-denominational organizations that deal with homelessness, respite care for children, cancer research, all these overseas aid, all these kind of organizations. So we're halfway through year 3, and we've started to scale. We have very precise growth figures that we've targeted, and growth areas that we've targeted for year 3 and year 4. So we're going to engage 60,000, so 60 rather than 60,000 people in years 3 and years 4. And we're on a 10-year journey to get 10% of the population engaged in Lift and doing Lift roundtables. And we've mapped that out, and it's pretty straightforward to do once you map it out and you just go after it. And so that's so there are growth figures. Now, in parallel with that, we have also got impact measurement. So in our first 2 years, it was about proving concept, and we did all the measurement of impact. In year 3, we have independent impact. Our impact is being measured by us, but also independently. So one of the universities now has taken on to measure the impact of Lift, and we're measuring impact in 3 areas. So it's the impact on the individual, impact on organizations, and impact on society. So what I'm really interested in is the individual impact and the impact on society. So we're looking for positive behavior change in individuals and also in society. So now we've moved on to a sort of a different phase of impact. Similarly, the advisory board that we set up for our first 2 years of operation have been amazing. There are 12 individuals. They've just been fantastic. But now that we've moved into scaling and we're moving into a much more of a national level, we now need to change our governance, and it needs to become much, I suppose, much stronger in some way. And it's not that the individuals or anything like that aren't strong, but we were a startup and now we've moved into scaling phase. So it's really important that we have a constitution, that we have audit committees, and so on. We're not set up as a charity. We're set up as a limited company, which is not for profit. But we want to adhere to the standards and the ethical standards and the governance standards of a charity, a charitable organization. That's important to us. So we're just moving on to all of that. We have a core team of 7 now. So I volunteered my time for up until July of this year. I've now started to be paid by Lyft because we've started to be able to sustain it financially. And the other 6 people, so we've taken on 3 additional people this year. Up until last year, we just had 3, and then 1 extra joined at the end of last year. So we started off, we were very lean. It was me and 2 paid people for the first 2 years. And now we're up to 7 paid individuals involved. And that's where we're at now. So what I might do is turn over to questions and let you ask what you'd like to know so I can fill you in on that maybe. I hope that's useful.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that. That's a great update. I'm going to pose the first question to you, and that is, in the early days, how did you fund the organization? Because even though you were donating your time, you had 2 paid staff, you had expenses, you had advertising. I know you had the expense of bringing John in. How did you fund the organization in the early days, as opposed to how are you funding it now? I'd love to understand both of those.
Yeah, okay. So initially, I suppose I just got so fell in love with what we were going to do that I was going to do it no matter what. And there was a stage where I was looking down the barrel of losing 400,000 euros if it didn't go well. And I remember my financial controller from my own business, I asked her to manage the finances for Lyft. And I remember having a coffee with her one day and she said, Joanne, you could lose nearly 500,000. Now, I don't have 500,000 to lose, okay? So it's not like I have this money somewhere off to the side somewhere. I don't. But I just had such conviction about it that I said to her, this is going to make a great story someday. She often says to me now, do you remember how the blood drained from my face? She was feeling sick and I was just excited about it. So I suppose the money side, so I paid, of the 2 employees that I had, one was my brother who worked in my other company. So initially I sort of convinced him to leave my other business and come over, but he was still working in my other business. So he was being paid that way. So this was before we launched, right? Mm-hmm. When myself and David were working away at Lyft and working really quickly, I really needed a project manager. I needed a good project manager because I was going to drop some balls. I'm good at getting out there and flying that flag and going and talking to people, but it's the follow-up work that needs to do. So I met this guy who I was telling about Lyft one day, and he told me, oh, my wife, she's a project planner in an engineer's office. She hates her job. And so we sort of decided between us that it would be great if his wife came to work for Lyft. But I said to him, I have no money, I don't have any money, not at the moment. He says, that's okay, I'll fund her to come and work with you. So they were just about to get married as well. So I remember meeting her, and she was a very she's an amazing person, but very sort of conservative, slow to change engineer. And I spoke for about 4 hours about what we were going to do and said, come on, you've got to come, and she was there, well, maybe after the wedding. And the wedding was just before we launched, and I was thinking in my head, no, we need you before that. So anyway, within 3 days she had decided to come on to Lyft. So she started for a few months and wasn't paid, which was amazing of her. And then so what I did was, because John, and I'm by contract can't say what I had agreed to pay to bring John over, but it was a lot of money. I could have bought an apartment for the amount of money that it was. And again, like I didn't tell my husband at the time that I was doing this, because I just felt I had to do it, and it would all work out fine, which it did. And so I needed to get 24 partner companies. I needed to get 24 on board, giving me a certain amount of money. I needed to make $250,000 to get to launch. So for everything, the hiring, the venue, the whole thing, all the branding, everything that we were doing, I was going to be $250,000 down by the time we got to launch day. So I just went company to company and just asked, will you come on board, and will you fund us? So I got 24 of them, and they, on average gave me about 10 grand each. Now, some of them didn't, but one of them actually came to me one day and said, do you know what? We really believe in what you're doing and really like what you're doing. If you fall short of funding, we'll help you out, and you don't have to let anybody know. You don't have to say, put our brand up there, because I had a very big thing that this is owned by nobody. It's not owned by me, and it's not owned by any corporate or any organization. So they were very good, and they gave us 40,000, which helped. And it meant some of the founding partners that came on board were very small organizations and might only have given us 200 or 300 euros. But anyway, so I had to raise 224,000 euros. And I raised 224,700 euros. So that was exactly the amount. It's good to set yourself a target. That was the amount that we raised. And once we launched, then we were at ground zero again. I had salaries to be paid and I had to get going. But once we launched, what we did was we asked partners, organizations that become partnered with Lyft, we asked them for an annual partnership fee, or contribution, we call it. And so they contribute a certain amount. Now, the organization can contribute as much or as little as they'd like. We use an honesty box system. We give them a guideline depending on their size of their organization, but it could be anything from 100 euros to 20,000 euros. And we ask them to become a partner of Lyft. And for that, we'll train people in their organization to be facilitators. And we train them to facilitate roundtables and use the process. We give them permission to use the process. So by getting these organizations on board, and we ask them to give us a 3-year commitment to Lyft, then we start to get some longevity, and we could start to plan forward. So that's really how we start to get our financial stability going with it. So really from that May when we launched all the way to that Christmas, I was working hard for the partners we'd already got on board to get Lyft started in their organizations, and then to bring on some new partners as well that would start to bring in some new funding. The way it operates now is that is exactly the same way. The corporates, they give us an annual fee or a contribution, and the organizations like like the homeless charities and so on, they don't have to contribute unless they'd like to. Similarly, the 100 schools that we have, I mean, our materials alone cost us, a lot to get out to every school, and we decided, because we got 100 schools asking us to do lift in September, and we wanted to say yes to all of them. We just asked them for 480 euros per school, and for that we train them. We give them materials, we give them certificates, we do all that kind of thing, and they just pay a small amount.
Very good. And I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm going to ask for questions from the rest of the board. In those early conversations when you needed your corporate sponsors to get started, what did those conversations sound like? Were these existing relationships that you knew these people, or were you contacting people cold, trying to explain the concept and cast a vision and secure their partnership?
So the very first people that I approached were business people, CEOs that I knew, that I just really trusted them as people. They are amazing leaders, phenomenal character, and have huge integrity and no ego. And so I approached a couple of them, and I actually gave a talk in October 2017. And one of those individuals set up that talk for me. He set up a lunch in in Dublin's fanciest hotel with 30 CEOs. And basically we said, we're good here, but we're not good enough. And when are we going to put up our hands and say we could be better, rather than just shrugging our shoulders and saying we're okay here and we're grand? So that sort of started the mood going a little bit. Now, to be honest, nobody really knew what I was talking about. I think they just got carried away with the emotions of it a bit. So those sort of one or two or three individuals, they said they would come on board initially to support, and that was all I needed, because I could then go into Vodafone and say, look, AIB are on board. That's our biggest bank, so it was those sort of three that led on to the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. And most of I would be pretty well connected in business here. And I said, but an awful lot of people know I didn't know. I might have been 2 degrees separated from them, in that somebody would recommend, Joanne, go talk to this person. I talked to probably over 100 CEOs to get the 24 on board that I got on board. I just literally ran. I ran fast and I ran hard, and I got a lot of no's. And if I got a no, I just moved quickly away. I didn't try and persuade anybody. If I went into an office, I knew when I started to explain what we were looking to do, in a bit of the same way as I've talked to you guys about it, I said, we're good here, but we're not good enough. And are you with me to do something about this? They either went, yeah, we're with you, we're going to help you, or they didn't. So that was kind of that was always the way that it went. And then, as they needed things, as they needed documents, as they needed, like any startup, I created them as they needed them. And we moved fast. That was literally how it happened. I didn't have it all prepared before I went into them. I just created it as we needed it.
Excellent. Okay, who's got a question?
Joanne, I would like you to talk the same thing we talked about a few days ago, the survey you made, because you're not using exactly the same setup as Global Priority.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So in fact, hang on a second now. I'll share my screen and I'll show you what we're doing. So we did a survey before we launched. So I really felt that it wasn't, and so did my brother's a co-founder and a good friend of mine as well, Sonia Lennon, who's a TV personality here. So we really felt that it wasn't our business to impose leadership values on people. We felt that it needed to be Ireland and homegrown from Ireland, and Ireland needed to decide if we're going to get better at leadership, if we're going to get better at leading ourselves, whether it's at our kitchen tables or in our classrooms or in our CEO boardrooms or in our clubhouses. David, myself, and Sonia didn't have any right to impose those on people. So we actually paid. That was one of the things that kind of broke my heart a little bit, because it cost me about 12 grand or maybe 10 grand or something like that at the time. And we did independent research and we asked Ireland, if we're to get better in these areas, where do we need to lead better? And the 8 areas on the left-hand side where it says leadership values, from respect to honesty, competence, and so on, they were the top 8 areas that came out. So we decided that that was where we were going to start, that if people in Ireland felt that's what we need to, that's the muscle we need to build inside people, that's what we would do. Now we've added on resilience and innovation and adaptability, because we did research again in March at the start of the pandemic, and people said, actually, we need to be, we need more resilience when we're leading, and we need to be more innovative and adaptable. So we added those in then. So they're the 10 that we have. Now we've just recently done that research again. And there are a few others that are coming up the top. So we're going to be bringing out sort of a new set, and the whole area of fairness and equality and diversity, they're all coming out strong. So we need to be doing stuff around that for people too. So we really wanted to respond to Ireland. And even though we had got the process from GPS, it was really important. It's not the way that GPS were doing it, and we adore the people in GPS, but we're not doing it because GPS is doing it, and we're not doing it the way that GPS is doing it. We were always doing it a different way, and we made that very clear to them right from the beginning, and they've been extremely gracious with us. I have to say, they've been just phenomenal. They're amazing people. But this is what was important for Ireland, really important for Ireland.
Yeah, yes, but because I think looking at this, if I should present this to a company or an organization, and I say we have 50 values, maybe they'll say, oh. But if you can say this is a typical set of values for the leadership in an organization, then you have something to start making a module for leadership. And then you could add the other ones according to the local needs.
Well, you see, I wasn't even going into an organization and saying these are typical values, leadership values for an organization. I was saying these are what are important to our country.
Yeah.
So that was the approach. It wasn't just the approach. That is what's important here. We're talking about a country that feels we're a decent country with decent human beings in it. Yeah. And it really resonated with people when we would, when we'd sort of sit back and go, I think we're losing some of who we are here as humans. Now with Ireland, you have to remember with Ireland, like in Ireland, and I don't know if this makes us a little bit different, but perhaps it does. Like my parents grew up in Ireland. My parents' parents grew up in Ireland. All my ancestors grew up in Ireland. I am 90-something% Irish.
Yeah.
And so there's a very strong sort of family tie. Now, that's not to say we have a beautiful multicultural country now, which is gorgeous, and this is for everybody, and everybody is included. But I think we just, as a country, we're realizing we've changed. Things are changing so much that we're starting to lose out on who we are as people. And so the LIFT values are very much, these are the things that the country say are important to us, not a corporation, not any other organization, but as a country and a people, this is what's important to us.
Yeah.
And I think that approach is brilliant because you're not trying to tell them how they fit into it. You're saying that on a national basis, this is what our research has proven, and you're letting them figure out how they fit into it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we talk about, you know, like I talk about, I do lift roundtables all the time. I'm lifting myself, but I'm also lifting my family. I'm lifting my organization, and I'm part of lifting my community, and I'm part of lifting Ireland. So it's about buying into that bigger picture.
Yeah.
You know, we're on this 10-year journey. I don't believe that lift should exist after 10 years. There is, you know, unless there's a real need for us, I have an issue or a problem with creating an organization that then becomes an organization for the sake of being an organization and create jobs for people when we really shouldn't.
Yeah.
So I've set us a 10-year goal so that we'll work hard and we'll work quick, and then we should be finished. And if the organization, if there's another need for it and it goes on and does something else, that's fine. But, you know, there may not be a need for me. That's great. I go do something else. That's okay. We'll have done what we needed to do. We're looking at creation behavioral change. We're looking at those newspaper articles where we have misbehavior in our organizations and across our police and our churches and our media and our corporations.
Yeah.
We're looking at lessening those. We're looking at being better. And so I hope we get some impact. Now, we do measure impact, as I said, on 3 areas: the individual, the organization, and society. And so far, our impact on the individual, 100% of people that have been going through LIFT that we have surveyed have told us that it is an effective way of learning about and looking at good values and leadership. Okay. Over 85% of people are giving us examples of positive behavior change. And whether that's they're putting away their mobile phone when they're talking to a colleague, or whether it is something else, it could be anything, but we're getting those examples of positive behavior change. Now, when we started, I had thought in my head, if we get 30% of people changing their behavior, that's enough for me. I'll be good with that. So the fact that we're getting that number, now it may just be at the beginning, the people that want to come on board and like this stuff, but it is that behavior change is what's really important. It's also really important now that we get the universities involved, because although they're kind of slow at moving, but anyway, I'm moving as quick as I can. But it is brilliant. So they've got a PhD student that they're assigning to LIFT, and we've got 2 professors. They're going to give their time free. We'll pay for the PhD student. But it's really important that we start to get this research. Otherwise, we're writing our own exam paper and we're correcting it ourselves, if you know what I mean. And that's not really going to work.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Excellent. Anybody else have a question for Joanne? Okay, I guess not. It's a wonderful example for us to follow. You know, you've spoken to several of the challenges that we've experienced in trying to get things going. I've always said that one of the advantages you have is that you live in the country that you're working in, and we do not. And so you know, the thing that really jumped out at me the most, I think, is the fact that early on you found a significant corporate champion who was going to help, you know, carry the banner. And I think that's really a lesson for us, and that we need to dive deep into gaining partners and gain some people that see the vision and want to become part of that. And so I'm going to go back and listen to this recording a number of times, because you've given me lots of food for thought. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, one last time. Anybody have questions for Joanne?
No, not at the moment.
I think there is one other thing as well. When I was putting the advisory board together, I really wanted diversity. And because I wanted this to be very inclusive. And so I even in my co-founders and in the advisory board, you know, we're not hugely different, but we are different. We come from different backgrounds. I mean, one of my advisory board is an amazing woman who was smuggled here as a refugee when she was 4. She's Muslim. You know, another one, he was the governor of our prisons. And is just a hugely well-respected man, hugely well-respected in our by our criminals as well, because he's just all about good values, not in a faith way or a church way, but all about good, or at least I don't know. So we wouldn't talk about that kind of stuff here, right? And so there's lots of different backgrounds, beliefs, and so on, and that has made it that's very important, because we don't look like we're all the same, and it doesn't look like we're it means that I want people to be able to look at Lyft and go, I can see myself there, whether you are a homeless person or whether you are you know, a gorgeous 14-year-old or whatever, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yep. Debbie, did you have a question?
I don't have a question. I just want to share something with Joanne. Joanne, I'm not sure that you have heard the start of why we did Denmark. Do you have 5 minutes that I can share that with you really quick?
Yeah, thank you.
Our daughter went to the Amazon, and she was required by her school to do like 6 missions trips in a period of time by her senior year. And so on her first mission trip, she came back just a changed child. She had got into all these poverty villages and had seen all these children that had nothing, and they were so glad to get a baseball or a baseball glove or one shoe, and they'd share the other shoe with somebody else, or one would take the baseball, one would take the mitt, and there was just no spoiledness. There was just this eagerness to just be fair and have these great values. And so then I said I wanted to go on her senior trip with her to the Amazon, and I, talked with Randy about it. We had planned it. My daughter was all excited. It was going to be her senior year. And I grew up in a fairly wealthy family, and I had never been to a village where people didn't have shoes and they didn't know who God was. And, still I've never been to an area like that. So after we almost booked the trip, God said, no, I have another place for you. And I'm like, no, I want to go to the Amazon. I already have this plan, I got this organized. I don't really need you to plan where my mission trip is, God. It's a missions trip. That's a good thing. So we had this little discussion for like a month. And at the end of the month, I just gave in and I said, fine, where do you want me? And I prayed about it, and I prayed and prayed. And at the end of the month, God said, I have a country, Denmark, for you. And I'm like, do they like wear those wooden shoes? Like, is that a country? Is it a city? Is it a continent? I had no idea. And so we get to Denmark on our first trip, and I hated it. The people were private, like everything that I was, like, it was just so much different from what I was. And I said, God, what am I going to do here? My husband is the one who speaks to churches and values and leadership. What am I going to do? He goes, you're going to deliver hope one-on-one to people. And so it's a calling for us. And it's not something that we can ever say no to. We can if we want. But I have just enjoyed uplifting people to get where they want to be, because that's where they're going to find more happiness and fulfillment. So this is all about people fulfilling their purpose through better values. So that's a little bit about why I choose to do this, why we chose to go out of the corporate world and, make sacrifices and do this, because I love the country of Denmark. I love their values. I love who they are. I love going there. And it's just they're a piece of my family now. So that's a little bit about my story behind us.
Lovely. And can I ask why are the rest of you involved?
Great question. Ivan?
Yeah, for the record, I can. We met Debbie and Randy 2 years ago, I think, in Roskilde, and Mona and I has for many years been active in marriage counseling, and years ago I was also teaching in sales and leadership because I have a professional background in those areas, but it was more the marriage part of it because that is closer to my heart. I feel very sorry for the many children who is not brought up in functioning homes and so forth. So I was, and me and my wife was grabbed by the idea immediately because we are talking about values and we are trying to get people combining their values. And even though we are talking to non-Christians, we can make them realize that two becomes one. How will two become one? It can only happen if you have mutual values. And so therefore, immediately, we grabbed the idea and I love it very much. And I would like to see the values be more a thing which is more open to talk about, because I have the age where I have seen that the values from old days were spoiled totally in the 60s and nobody knew what to do. They only did what they would like to do. And now we are sitting with the results of all this, with a lot of young people in a horrible time and a lot of broken marriages and a lot of bad leaders in companies, because nobody has been looking at their values, because everything is possible, everything is free, but they spoil themselves and they spoil other people. So I can totally admit to we are good, but we can be better. That goes for the corporate part of it, and that goes for the private part of it.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Nils Biter, what's your response to that question?
Well, I've just been away from it from some time, and then I'm still just more listening to it than to see how it goes. And I'm a little bit on probation right now, so we see how it goes. And of course, I have different businesses and a lot of things to do in my daily work. But of course, there's a lot of things that you can do better when you are leading people. And I've been in the business for more than 36 years, so I've seen a lot of bad leaders and working with those. So of course, I'm open-minded to see how it goes and help all leaders.
Yeah. We have just recently had some very tough Me Too accidents in Denmark. Politicals who has been behaving in the youth organization, and some of them have lost the head mayor of Copenhagen lost his job, lost all his activities because he has been a little too kind to the young women when he has had something to drink. And for most of the political parties, it were exposed very bad behavior when they were having parties and whatever. And of course, that is because they have not set the standards. They have not set the values. So my value is as good as yours, and I would like to touch you whenever I want to and wherever I like to, because that's my value and that's okay. So Me Too has really given us an opportunity to enter into all the political parties saying, you need to do something in your youth organizations, because otherwise this will never end.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I suppose I have my own personal reasons why this is important to me.
Yeah.
They're different to my brother's reasons, and they're different to everybody else. I think probably, we all have our own reasons for why this is important to us. And but the lovely thing about it is that um, it's unified by all of us want positive change, one individual at a time. And nobody's trying to impose anything on anybody else apart from just fundamental good behavior.
Yeah.
And that's kind of nice in this world
Yeah.
where there's so much dividing everybody. It's kind of nice that it's kind of neutral in that way.
Yeah.
So and that is really important here, because our organizations wouldn't accept anything else apart from it being completely inclusive like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one last question for you before we let you go. How best can we interface with you? You've gained some great experience in building an organization for your country, and obviously some of the things that you've learned are not going to be applicable to Denmark, but a lot of what you've learned would be. How best could we interface with you and maximize that relationship that we have?
Oh, listen, guys, I'm happy to I'm happy to do a call like this with you if that works for you, to answer your questions and pass on our learnings. I think, look, I think because I like building business, so this has been kind of easy enough for me. I can see how to structurally build this so far. Now the next 2 years are going to be different with scale, but I'm certainly happy to act in a whatever mentoring capacity to you, or, and I don't mean anything formal, but just answer questions for you and be there as a sounding board if that would help you.
Yes.
I'd certainly be very happy to do that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we will definitely do that. And I think given the time difference, Ivan, I'm probably going to have you be on point
Yeah.
for that relationship, because I think it's easier for you guys to connect
Yeah.
during normal hours.
Yeah.
Any time that connects for me is going to be into your evening. So
Yes. Yes.
let's have you be point person, and we will definitely take advantage of your willingness to
Sure.
Yeah.
advise us.
Yeah. Thank
Sure.
you very much. Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome.
All right.
And at some stage,
Thank you.
we'll do one of these trips in Copenhagen and another one in Dublin.
Yes, yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. We have room for you.
Yeah, good. After all this Borgen watching, I'll have to take a trip over.
You have to see it by your own eyes.
Yeah, but I have been in Copenhagen a few times, but it's been a few years.
Yeah.
So
it's a nice city. Yes.
Beautiful city.
Yeah.
Expensive, but beautiful.
Yes.
Randy, can I make a comment?
Sure.
Something that I noticed when I listened to Ivan speak and I listened to Nesberg, I don't know if that's how you pronounce your name, but one of the things that I loved about meeting both of their families, and this is rare in the United States, is the love that both of these men have for their wives.
Yes.
And the marriage that they both have was so attractive. And they have these happy families, and they're not perfect, but happy families and overly happy marriages. And in my heart of hearts, I just want happiness in marriage and love for the country of Denmark and for anyone who I'm around. So part of me was very attracted to both of these couples because they already have been valuing the value of marriage and all that it takes to make a marriage work, that I just love working with them and I just love being with them. And I just want that for the rest of the country to have what these two couples have. So
may I add a little history about this?
Sure.
A little comment. because I got familiar with the DISC evaluation, and I looked at the internet to see what it is, because I have been through some of those through my business years, but this was not new to me, but another setup. And I took the survey, and I told Debbie and Randy about the results, and I think it was Debbie who said, then how come that you can have such a good marriage? And I said, that's very easy, because I know if I wanted a good marriage, I have to adjust to my wife's values.
That's it.
So it's very simple.
Yeah, there's a lot of great marriages saved by DISC.
Exactly. So,
Sure.
yes.
Sure.
Oh,
Well, look,
very
it's
good.
great to meet you all. Thanks for inviting me in.
Thank you, Joanne.
Yeah.
Look, great to see you. And look, happy to share any learnings that we have. We're certainly working hard and enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
So yeah, Denmark and Ireland, we're both countries that I think the rest of Europe have a lot of time for. So it's a pleasure to be virtually connected with you guys.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Same to you.
Likewise.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Well, good. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.